Alaskan winters have always seemed endless to me, but in my 7 years as a school bus driver, I've learned to find beauty even in the darkest months of the year. Anchorage is a special city. The mountains surrounding it seem to be both protectors and guardians, keeping you from escaping. My route included the outskirts of the city, where the streets were narrower and the houses were farther apart. Sometimes I wondered about the children I was carrying, the ones who get on last because they live farthest away, the ones no one's waiting for them at home with hot cocoa. I thought I could feel their loneliness. That day in late November, when the sun was barely creeping over the horizon, as if lazy to rise higher, I noticed a new car outside our garage. A dark blue pickup truck, too clean for this time of year. Our new tech inspector turned out to be a tall man with broad shoulders and an unexpectedly soft look. Tanith Faulkner, I introduced myself, extending my hand. Quentin Hedge, he replied, and his handshake was firm but careful. He had recently moved to Anchorage from Portland, working as a fish inspector. He checked our garage and buses before winter transportation. We exchanged a few phrases about the weather, that perennial topic for awkward first conversations. I got home at 5 p.m. as usual. Our family store, Faulkner's Grocery, was on the first floor of a two-story house. We lived upstairs, my parents, me, and Merritt, my younger sister by 5 years. Finally! Exclaimed my mom, standing behind the cash register. Merritt called that she was late for college and I didn't have the strength to stand here any longer. Eunice Faulkner, my mother, always looked like she was running out of patience. Short, with dyed brown hair, she looked at me with that familiar expression, a mixture of fatigue and frustration, as if I were the cause of all her problems. I just finished my shift, Mom, I replied, trying not to show my annoyance. Okay, fine. Just fill in for me for half an hour. I'll make dinner. It had always been like this since we'd moved into this house 10 years ago, when I was 22 and Merritt was only 17. I was working, helping out at the store, and Merritt was special, talented, smart, beautiful, the future of the Faulkner family. She was studying business administration at the local college and planned to modernize the family store into a real business, as she liked to say. Tanidia, hi, Merritt sang, bursting into the store 2 hours later while I was still behind the register. Her blonde hair, recently dyed ash blonde, was pulled back into a high ponytail, and her face had the usual winning smile. You promised you'd be back by 6, I said, not looking up from the register. The girls and I were talking about the project. You have no idea what an amazing idea we have. She plopped her bag on the counter. We're thinking of opening a little coffee shop in the corner of the store. Can you believe it? What does your dad think? Oh, I haven't talked to him yet. But Mom's thrilled. Of course Mom's thrilled. For Merritt, there was always energy, money, and excitement. At dinner, Father was silent as usual. Harold Faulkner always seemed to me a man apart from our family drama. Tall, with thinning hair and paint-stained hands, he liked to paint northern landscapes in his spare time, though he never showed them to anyone but us. Dad, what do you think of the coffee corner in the store? Merritt didn't hold out first. Dad set his fork aside. It would require an investment. But it will pay off. I did the math. I ate my dinner in silence. It was useless to argue. If Merritt wanted something, she got it. Always. The next day I met Quentin again. He was checking the brakes on my bus. Everything okay? I asked him as I got closer. Yeah, it's in good condition. He straightened up, wiping his hands with a rag. How long have you been driving? 7 years. Do you like your job? I wondered. No one had ever asked me that question before. Yes, I finally answered. I love it. It's, calm. He nodded as if he understood. Then he looked at his watch. My workday ended 10 minutes ago. Do you want to grab a coffee? I hadn't planned on a relationship. After I'd broken up with Brian 3 years ago, I'd decided I'd had enough. But with Quentin, it was, easy. We'd meet at a little coffee shop near the garage. We'd talk about work, books, music. He'd talk about Portland, I'd talk about Anchorage. He was recently divorced, I'd been single a long time. I don't know why you're alone, he said one day. You're smart, you're beautiful. And 32 years old, I added with a smile. It's not age, it's experience. he replied seriously. Our first kiss happened 2 weeks after we met, outside my house. The snow was falling in large flakes, settling on his dark hair. Will I see you tomorrow? He asked, not letting go of my hand. Yes, I answered, feeling a long-forgotten warmth inside me. At home, Merritt noticed my smile. Did someone have a date? She winked, arranging the groceries on the shelves. Maybe, I answered evasively. Oh, tell me. Who is he? Where's he from? What does he do? Her curiosity was genuine, and for a moment I felt the closeness that had been between us when we were kids, before our parents started comparing us, before one teacher after another started telling us how special Merritt was. He's an inspector, checks our buses. He just moved here from Portland. Wow, how long have you two been dating? It's not really dating, we're just, hanging out. Merritt laughed. Sure, 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 just socializing. And the blush on your cheeks is from the cold, isn't it? That night I told her more than I'd planned, about how we talk for hours, how he listens intently, about how he made me feel visible for the first time in years. Sounds serious, Merritt said, and something in her voice made me wary, a note I couldn't quite decipher. I don't think so. We'd only known each other a month, but I was lying to myself. This was getting serious. We spent every evening together. He showed me pictures of his childhood in Oregon. I told him about my dream of traveling. On Christmas Eve, I brought him to our house for dinner. Mom was emphatically polite, Dad was quiet, and Merritt was charming. She asked questions about his work, laughed at his jokes, told him about her plans to expand the store. Your sister's very ambitious, Quentin remarked when we went out on the porch for a smoke. She always has been, I replied, watching our breath turn to vapor in the frosty air. And you? He turned to me. What are your dreams? I wondered. What was I dreaming about? It had been so long since anyone had asked me that. I don't know, I answered honestly. I used to want to travel, to see the world. But then what? Then life happened. He took my hand in his. Life still happens, Tanith. Right now. That night we made love for the first time. In his small apartment on his narrow bed with the wind outside the window. It was gentle and unhurried, like we had all the time in the world. I love you, he whispered as we lay there, intertwining our legs and looking up at the ceiling. We've only known each other for 2 months, I reminded him, but inside I squirmed with happiness. Sometimes 2 months was enough. January flew by in a blur of happiness. February brought the first quarrels, small, quickly fading. In March we talked about moving in together. But not here, he said, referring to his apartment. We'll find something new. Ours. In April I felt something was wrong. First a slight malaise in the morning, then a strange sensitivity to odors. When I missed my period, there was little doubt. I bought the test at a drugstore across town, afraid to meet someone I knew. 2 stripes appeared almost instantly. Pregnant. At 32, I sat on the edge of the bathroom holding the plastic test and didn't know whether to cry or laugh. We had talked about children, in glimpses, in those vague plans for the future. But not now. Not so soon. Quentin was due back from a business trip tomorrow. I decided to wait until he got back before telling my parents. But when I got down to dinner, my face was sure to give away my condition. Are you sick? Mom asked, looking across the table at me. No, I'm just tired, I answered, avoiding her gaze. Merritt looked at me carefully, too carefully, as if she could see right through me. Are you sure you're okay? She asked me later when we were doing the dishes. Yeah, just, tough day. She nodded, but I saw something flicker in her eyes, something resembling understanding. In the morning, I called the clinic and made an appointment. The pregnancy was confirmed. 8 weeks. You'll have a baby in December, the doctor said, smiling. A baby. My baby. And Quentin's. I walked home, feeling a new life budding inside me. A small miracle, unexpected, unplanned, but already so real. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A message from Quentin. Got back early. I'll be at your place in an hour. Miss you. And in that moment, in the middle of the street, in the bright April sun, I realized I was ready. Ready for this baby, for this new life. for the future that had suddenly opened up in front of me. Quentin appeared on the doorstep with a small bouquet of wildflowers, the first spring flowers to break through the melting snow. "You look different," he said, looking at me carefully. I didn't know how to start this conversation. We walked to his apartment, and I noticed that he'd brought a new painting, a small seascape that now hung over the couch. "Beautiful," I nodded toward the painting. "I bought it at the local market in Sitka." He put the kettle on. "Tanith, is something wrong?" I took a deep breath. There was no point in stalling. "I'm pregnant, Quentin." His hand froze halfway to the cups. He turned around slowly, and his expression was unreadable. "Are you sure?" "Yeah. I went to the doctor today. 8 weeks." He lowered himself into the chair across from me, not averting his gaze. "It's unexpected." "I know." We sat in silence, broken only by the whistle of the kettle boiling. I didn't know what to say next. What did I expect? Excitement? Joy? We've never really discussed children. "What do you think about it?" he finally asked. "Yeah, I've decided to keep the baby," I answered quietly. "But I understand if you—" He held up his hand, stopping me. "Wait. This is serious, Tanith. Very serious." "I know it is. I need to think about it. This changes everything." I felt a twinge inside. It wasn't what I expected. Not this reaction. "How much time do you need?" "I don't know." He ran his hand through his hair. "A couple days? A week? A week? A whole week to decide if he wants to be with us, me, and our baby." "Okay," I stood up. "I'll wait." "Tanith." He stood up too. "I'm not saying no, I'm just thinking." I got it. I returned home with a heavy heart. What would I tell my parents? How will I explain that I, a 32-year-old woman, am pregnant by a man I've only been dating for a few months? A man who doesn't know if he wants this child. Merritt met me at the door of the store. "Hey, you're as pale as death. What's wrong?" Her voice sounded concerned, but something in her eyes made me wary. Like she already knew the answer. "Nothing. Just tired." "Have you been to Quentin's?" "Yeah, and?" I walked past her to the stairs to the second floor. "And nothing. We just talked." "About what?" Her insistence was getting annoying. "All sorts of things, Merritt. Not now, okay?" "Did you tell him?" I stopped halfway up the stairs. I turned around slowly. "What are you talking about?" "The baby." She looked at me without smiling. "You're pregnant, aren't you?" A chill ran down my spine. "How did you—" "The test is in the trash can," she shrugged. "Not a good place to keep secrets." I closed my eyes for a moment. Of course, I'd forgotten about the test I'd made at home. I was going to tell everyone when the time was right. And when would that be? After the birth? There was a strange note in her voice. Not sympathy, not joy. Something else. "Merritt, I need time. It's complicated." "He's not happy, is he?" She climbed a few steps closer to me. "He doesn't want a child?" "He's thinking about it." She hummed. "Of course he does. All men think when they need to take responsibility." "You don't understand." "No, you don't understand." Her voice suddenly hardened. "You think you can just bring another man in here? Into our house? Into our business?" I stared at her in bewilderment. "What are you talking about? This is my baby and I—" "Are you going to raise it here? With what money? The money you make from your bus? Or the money you take from the cash register?" That last one hit me like a whip. "What?" "Don't pretend." Merritt crossed her arms over her chest. "I saw you take the money." I felt the blood rush from my face. "Are you crazy? I never—" "Money goes missing, Tanith. And it goes missing on a regular basis. Small amounts, but it adds up." "It's absurd." I walked down a couple steps, coming face to face with her. "I've never taken a penny from the till. Never." "Prove it." The absurdity of the situation rendered me speechless. My own sister was accusing me of stealing, something I would never do. "I have nothing to prove, Merritt. And if money really is going missing, maybe you should look at yourself." Her face contorted with anger. "How dare you? After everything I do for this store." Our conversation was interrupted by my father's voice. "What's going on here?" He was standing at the bottom of the stairs, watching us with a frown on his face. "Nothing," I answered quickly. Just talking. About Tanith stealing money from the cash register, Merritt said coldly. My father slowly shifted his gaze from her to me. Tanith. That's not true. My voice shook with indignation. I've never taken a dime from this store. Then where did you get the money for that new jacket? And those boots? Merritt pointed to my shoes that Quentin gave me for Christmas. They were a gift from Quentin, and I bought the jacket with my paycheck. Of course you did. On a bus driver's salary. Her voice oozed sarcasm. Dad raised his hand, calling for silence. That's enough. Both of you go downstairs and explain things properly. We made our way into the living room. Mom was sitting in an armchair, her knitting lying in her lap. She looked up as we entered. What's wrong? Why are you yelling? Merritt says I'm stealing money from the store, I blurted out before my sister could say anything. Mom turned a surprised look on Merritt. Is it true? Yes. Merritt sank down on the couch, suddenly very serious. I've been checking the cash register for the last few weeks. Money has been disappearing regularly. Small amounts, but it adds up. And what makes you think it's me? I asked, trying to remain calm. Merritt pulled a folded piece of paper out of her pocket. I wrote down all the days the money went missing. It all coincides with your shifts at the store. I felt the room start to spin. This is some kind of crazy dream. Or a nightmare. It's a fake. I didn't take anything. Why would I fake this? Merritt handed the paper to her father. Check it out for yourself. Her father looked at the notes, his face growing darker and darker. Tanit, this is a serious accusation, he finally said. Do you have an explanation? My explanation is that I didn't take that money. I was almost screaming. I work, I have my paycheck. Why would I steal it? Merritt suddenly sobbed. A large tear rolled down her cheek. I didn't want to say, but maybe she needs money for an abortion. The room fell completely silent. What? Mom slowly got up from her chair. She's pregnant. Merritt wiped away a tear. With that Quentin. But he doesn't want the baby. I guess she needs the money to… Stop it! I jumped at her. Stop lying. Yes, I'm pregnant, but I'm not going to have an abortion. And Quentin. You're pregnant? Mom's voice cut through the air like a knife. I turned to her, suddenly realizing that I had just revealed my secret under the worst possible circumstances. Yeah, 8 weeks. And who's the father? Quentin. We've been seeing each other for, that inspector? Mom interrupted me, her voice cold. You barely know each other. We've known each other for 5 months, and we… Is he going to marry you? Mom interrupted again. I stopped talking. I didn't have an answer to that question. He's, thinking, Mom snorted. Of course he is. Let me finish. I felt anger rising inside. This is unexpected for both of us. He needs time. Time? Merritt raised her voice again, her eyes red with tears. What are we to do while he thinks? Support you and your child? I'm working. I have money. On which you can barely feed yourself, let alone a child. That's enough. Dad raised his hand. Let's get back to the point. Tanit, the money is missing. And the coincidences. It's not a coincidence. It's a setup. I turned to Merritt. You set this whole thing up. Why? What did I do to you? Merritt cried for real. Her shoulders were shaking and tears were streaming from her eyes. Is that how you respond? Are you blaming me? Calm down, Merritt. Her mother came over to her and put her arm around her shoulders. It's okay. I couldn't believe my eyes. My sister made a scene, accused me of stealing, and now my mom is consoling her? It's crazy. I took a step back. It's crazy. I'm leaving. Quentin will take me in. Are you sure? Merritt lifted her tear-stained face. He hasn't returned your calls all day. I froze. How does she know? I didn't call him today. You didn't? She pulled out her cell phone. What's this? She showed me the screen. Calls from my number to Quentin's number. 3 missed ones. It's not me. My voice sounded hollow. Where's my phone? I patted my pockets, then remembered I'd left it in the bag I'd dropped it in the front door. You took my phone, I said slowly, looking at my sister. You called him from my phone. What are you talking about? She looked genuinely puzzled, too genuinely. Why would I do that? I turned around and rushed to the front door. My bag was where I'd left it. I opened it and went cold. My phone was gone. Are you looking for this? Merritt came out into the hallway, holding my phone in her hand. It fell out of your bag when you dropped it. I snatched the phone out of her hands and checked it. There were 3 outgoing calls to Quentin's number. All missed. You're lying. It's all a setup. Tanith. Her father's voice sounded tired. That's enough. We've seen the evidence, and your accusations against your sister are only making things worse. I turned back to them, my mom hugging a sobbing Merritt, my dad with a grim face. My family. The people who were supposed to support me, to believe me. And they chose her. They chose her again. I didn't take anything. My voice sounded lifeless. And I'm leaving. Now. Where are you going? Mom asked. To your Quentin who won't answer his cell phone? That's none of your business. It is our business as long as you live under our roof. Dad stepped forward. And if you did take the money, we need to decide. I didn't take anything, I shouted, tears welling up in my eyes. Don't you see? She set it all up. Merritt sobbed louder, covering her face with her hands. Her mother hugged her tighter. I'll tell you what. My father looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite make out. Either you admit you took the money, return it, and apologize to your sister, or… Either what? My voice was shaking. Either you leave. Now. I couldn't believe my ears. My own father was kicking me out of the house. Me, pregnant. In April, when it was still snowing outside and the temperature was still below freezing at night. You can't be serious. I am dead serious. There's no room in this house for thieves and liars. I didn't steal. Tears were streaming down my cheeks. I swear to you, I didn't take anything. Then you have 10 minutes to pack your things and leave. At that moment, I realized that this was the end. The end of my life in this house. The end of a relationship with a family that had never really been on my side. I walked up to my room on stiff legs. I pulled out a small travel bag and started throwing things into it. Underwear, a few t-shirts, jeans. My body moved mechanically, as if separate from my consciousness. After 5 minutes, I went downstairs. No one came out to say goodbye. I could hear voices from the living room. My mom comforting Merritt. My dad saying something in a low, angry voice. I put on my jacket, slung my bag on my shoulder, and opened the door. Outside, a blizzard was raging, a blizzard of April, sudden and violent. Snow and rain slammed into my face. The wind chilled me to the bone. At least take your boots! Mom's voice sounded behind me. I turned around. She was standing in the doorway, holding my winter boots. I had worn my slippers, intending to change into them before I went out, but in my haste I had forgotten. I reached out for the shoes, but Mom took a step back. First confess. Did you take the money? No, I answered firmly. I didn't take anything. Her face petrified. Then get out. She threw the boots back into the house and slammed the door shut. I stood on the porch in my house slippers with my bag on my shoulder, not believing what was happening. My own mother had kicked me out in a blizzard without even letting me put on warm shoes. I took a step forward, and the slipper was instantly soaked in an icy puddle. Second step. A third. By the time I reached the end of the street, my feet were numb with cold, and the rain and snow had turned my thin jacket into a wet rag. With trembling hands, I pulled out my cell phone. The shattered screen barely glowed, the last reminder that this wasn't a nightmare, but reality. I dialed Quentin's number, begging for him to answer. 1 beep, 2, 3. The caller is unable to take your call. Leave a message after the tone. I put my hand down without leaving a message. What could I say? Hi, it's me, Tanith. I just got kicked out of the house barefoot. I'm pregnant with your baby, and I have nowhere to go. Can you help me? The snow was falling harder and harder, hiding the city behind a white veil. I stood at the crossroads, soaked to the skin, my feet numb and homeless. And a tiny heart was beating inside me, the heart of the child for whom I had to survive. I took a step forward, and then another, and another, toward the one place I hoped I'd be accepted without question. The road to Vern's house seemed endless. I walked with my arms wrapped around myself, trying to keep warm. The snow and rain pelted my face, and my wet slippers were no longer any protection for my feet. Every step reverberated with pain. Vern Tanner lived in a small house on the outskirts of Anchorage, an old but well-maintained structure with a snow-covered garden. We weren't close friends, more like co-workers who sometimes had coffee together between flights. She was a soft-spoken woman of about 45 with short graying hair and a look that saw too much. I knew little about her. Widow, husband killed in an oil rig accident 10 years ago, no children. After he died, she moved to Anchorage and started driving a school bus. I wasn't sure she'd accept me, but I had no choice. My feet hardly felt cold anymore, which was a dangerous sign. I knocked on the door, my whole body shivering. It seemed like an eternity before the door opened, and Vern appeared on the doorstep in a plaid robe and a mug in her hand. Tanith? Her eyes widened in surprise. What the hell? Vern. My lips were so frozen I could barely speak. I'm sorry. I don't have anywhere to go. I staggered, and she quickly picked me up, pulling me into the warmth of the house. Oh my God, you're soaking wet. Are those slippers? I couldn't answer. The warmth of her house washed over me, and suddenly all strength left my body. I felt myself falling, and the last thing I remember was Vern's arms picking me up. I woke up on the couch, covered by several blankets. The fire was crackling in the fireplace, and Vern was sitting in the chair across from me, watching me carefully. Welcome back, she said when she saw me open my eyes. How are you feeling? I tried to sit up, but I felt dizzy. Lie down. Vern stood up and walked over to me. You've got a slight chill. I would have called an ambulance, but I thought I'd see if you'd come to your senses first. Thank you, I wheezed. Yeah. Don't talk now. She handed me a cup of hot tea. Drink this. You can tell me what happened later. I took a sip obediently. The tea was strong and sweet, with lemon just what I needed. Your things are drying, Vern continued. And your slippers, I'm afraid I'll have to throw them away. But I found some old socks and house shoes for you. I looked at my feet wrapped in thick woolen socks. Vern had saved me from frostbite. A baby, I suddenly remembered, putting my hand down on my stomach. I'm pregnant. Vern froze for a moment, then nodded. Then you should rest all the more. How many weeks? 8. She nodded again, as if that explained everything. Get some rest. We'll talk in the morning. I slept for almost 24 hours. The next time I woke up, it was a bright day outside the window, and the blizzard had subsided, leaving behind fresh snow glistening in the sun. Vern was sitting at the kitchen table reading the newspaper. She looked up when I walked in. You're looking better, she said. Feeling better, I replied, though it was only partially true. I did feel better physically, but there was a coldness inside that no amount of warmth could melt. I made oatmeal. Vern pointed to the pot on the stove. And coffee. You'd probably prefer tea, though. Yeah, thanks. I sat down at the table, feeling awkward. Vern and I had never been close enough for me to show up on her doorstep in the middle of the night in this condition. Vern, Eat first, she interrupted me. You can tell me what happened later. I obediently took the bowl of oatmeal. It tasted tasteless, but I forced myself to swallow a few spoonfuls. The baby needed strength. Merritt set me up, I began when the bowl was half empty. Accused me of stealing money from the store. My parents believed her, kicked me out of the house. Vern listened in silence, not interrupting. They wouldn't even let me put on shoes, I added, tears welling up in my throat. My own mother had slammed the door in my face when I'd asked for boots. Your sister, Vern said slowly, has always seemed a bit troubled. In what way? Vern shrugged. I saw her a couple of times when she came by the garage. Something about her, wrong. She was always a favorite. Bitterness rose in me like a wave. Talented, smart, beautiful Merritt. And I'm just Tanith, who drives the bus. Vern looked at me carefully. And the baby's father? Quentin. I felt tears come to my eyes. He said he needed to think about it when I told him I was pregnant. And now he's not answering his cell phone. Men, Vern snorted. Always run away when things get tough. I didn't answer. Part of me still hoped that Quentin was just busy, that he'd call back, that he'd explain everything. You can stay here, Vern said after a pause. I have a spare room. Not too luxurious, but a roof over your head. I looked up at her, feeling gratitude mixed with surprise. Why are you helping me? Because no one helped me once, she answered simply. When Mark died, I was left alone. No money, no support. No one to lend a hand. I don't want anyone to go through that alone. I didn't know what to say. The tears I'd been holding back finally flowed down my cheeks. Thank you, I whispered. Vern patted my shoulder awkwardly. Okay, no more tears. You've got double responsibility now. She nodded at my stomach. So pull yourself together and figure out how to move on with your life. That afternoon, I called the school garage and explained the situation. Not the whole thing, of course, just that I had to move urgently and would be at work tomorrow. Then I tried calling Quentin again, but without success. Toward evening, I made up my mind and texted him. Quentin, I realize you need time, but I need to know your decision. I'm pregnant, I've been kicked out of my house, and I'm at a coworker's house right now. Please call me. The answer came an hour later, as Vern and I watched some old movie on TV. I'm sorry about what happened, but I'm not ready for that responsibility. I'm sorry. 9 words. 9 words that crossed out everything that had been between us. Everything that could have been. I put the phone away and stared silently at the TV screen, unable to see what was happening there. Vern didn't ask, just sat next to me, giving me space to grieve. I can handle it, I said into the void. Yes, Vern replied. You will. In the morning, I went back to work. Sitting behind the wheel of the school bus, I felt a strange calmness. This was my world, my little island of control in the chaos that was now my life. The kids entered the bus, noisy and carefree as usual. They didn't know their driver was pregnant, homeless, and betrayed by everyone she loved. They just saw the same smile, heard the same good morning. During my lunch break, I went to the bank and checked my account. I had some savings, not much, but enough to keep me afloat for a few months if I was frugal. I started calculating how much I would need for rent, food, clothes for my growing belly, things for the baby. The numbers swirled in my head, adding up to frightening sums. I felt panic coming up to my throat. How will I manage on my own? How am I going to work with a newborn baby? Hey, Faulkner. The voice of Ray, the garage supervisor, snapped me out of my thoughts. Are you okay? I looked up. Ray, a heavy-set man with perpetually disheveled hair, was looking at me with concern. Yeah, I'm fine, I've been thinking. You look pale. Are you sure you're not sick? I knew I had to tell him I was pregnant. Sooner or later it would become obvious and I'd have to take maternity leave. But I couldn't bring myself to say the words. Not now. It's all right, Ray. Just didn't get enough sleep. He nodded, though there was still doubt in his eyes. If you need anything, let me know. When I got back to Vern's that evening, she greeted me with the news. I talked to my cousin. She's renting out a room in her house. It's cheap. I felt something inside me clench. Of course I couldn't stay at Vern's forever. I had to find my place. Thank you, I replied. Ia, take a look. Take your time, Vern said with a wave of her hand. You can stay here as long as you need to. Just wanted you to know about the options. I nodded, feeling relieved and grateful. That night I couldn't sleep. Lying in Vern's guest room, I stared at the ceiling and thought about my life, about my parents who had chosen to believe merit over me, about Quentin, who wasn't strong enough to stay, about the child that was growing inside me, unaware of the chaos it would be born into, and about myself, about the woman who was always in the shadows, always second to her bright sister, the one whose dreams were put on hold, the one whose desires were never prioritized. Not anymore, I thought, placing a hand on my stomach. Things will be different now. The days merged into weeks. I worked, saved money, looked for a place I could afford. Vern didn't rush me to move out, but I knew I couldn't abuse her kindness forever. One evening, as we sat on her porch watching the sunset, a rare treat for Anchorage this time of year, Vern suddenly spoke up. You could stay. For good. I turned to her, not sure I understood. What? This house is too big for one, she shrugged. And with a baby, it's going to be hard to find a good place you can afford. Vern, I can't. Yes, you can, she interrupted me. You'll pay half the bills. Cook. Help around the house. It's only fair. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. This woman I barely knew a month ago was offering me a house. Why? I asked. Why are you being so nice to me? I told you. She looked away. There's too much room for me on my own. But I could see that there was more behind those words. Loneliness? Maybe. Sympathy? Maybe. But something told me that Vern's story was more complicated than she was telling. I'll think about it, I replied. Thank you. She nodded, and we continued to watch the sunset in comfortable silence. The next day, I finally decided to tell Ray about the pregnancy. I'm happy for you, Faulkner. He patted my shoulder awkwardly. When are you due? December. But I plan to work through November if possible. Sure. Father? I looked away. He's not, in the painting. Ray nodded, not asking any more questions, for which I was grateful. You know, he said after a pause, we're looking for an assistant dispatcher. Office work. It would be good for, you know. He waved his hand indefinitely toward my stomach. I felt a warmth spill inside. Office work, stable hours, the opportunity to work even with a small child. Thank you, Ray. Yeah, I'd like to give it a try. Uh, okay. I'll talk to my boss. I shared the news with Vern this evening. The dispatcher? She nodded thoughtfully. Not bad. Stable. And you'll be able to take the baby with you when he's older. Yeah, but I'd have to take a course. Training. So go ahead, she shrugged. You've got the time. And the money to do it, I added, calculating the costs in my mind. I'll find the money, Vern said firmly. I can. No, I shook my head. You've done too much for me already. I can do this on my own. She looked at me with some new emotion. Respect? You're stronger than you think, Tanith Faulkner. That night, lying in bed, I realized I felt hopeful for the first time in a long time. Not everything was perfect. My parents still believed Merritt's lies. Quentin still didn't want to be a part of his child's life. I was still alone. But not completely. I had a roof over my head, a job, a plan for the future, and maybe a new friend in the form of Vern. I put my hand on my still flat belly. We'll make it, baby, I whispered. We'll make it together. And for the first time in a long time, I believed my words. The next day, I registered for the dispatcher's course, which started in 2 weeks. Ray confirmed that the place would be waiting for me when I graduated. You'll need to work as a driver for another month while we find a replacement, he said. But then we'll transfer you to the office. I nodded gratefully, feeling the pieces of my new life begin to fit into a picture. Vern greeted me with dinner and the news. I talked to the neighbor. She's giving away a crib. Her grandkids have already grown out of it. Vern, it's 7 months before the baby is due. I couldn't help but smile. It's better to prepare ahead of time. She shrugged, but I could see she was smiling too. At that moment, I realized my decision was made. I would stay here with Vern, with this amazing woman who held out her hand to me when everyone else turned away. I accept your offer, I said. About staying. Vern nodded as if it was a given. Good. We'll discuss the details tomorrow. And so, amidst the ruins of my old life, I began to build a new one, without a toxic family, without a man who wasn't strong enough, but with new support, new opportunities, and new determination. I will survive. Not just survive, I will live my life to the fullest, and my child will never feel second best, never stand in the shadows. He will know that he is loved unconditionally, completely, with all my heart. That was my vow, my promise to the little life that was growing inside me. And I intended to keep it, no matter what. May brought long-awaited warmth and the first real green to Anchorage. My life was slowly finding a new rhythm. The dispatcher's course was interesting, though stressful. We studied routing, logistics, and communication systems. Despite the fatigue and occasional nausea in the morning, I felt more confident every day. My belly was starting to round out subtly. At 11 weeks, it was more of a sensation than something visible to others, but I knew my body was changing. Vern noticed me scrutinizing myself in the mirror and remarked dryly, "You'll need a new uniform soon." I smiled. Her practicality always had a calming effect on me. No excessive sentimentality, just facts and decisions. I tried not to think about the family I'd left behind, though sometimes, mostly at night when I couldn't sleep, the memories came in waves. My mother's face as she slammed the door. Merritt's sobs. my father's cold, detached gaze. At such moments, I reminded myself that they had made their choice. My family now was Vern and my unborn child. I tried not to think about Quentin either, though sometimes I caught myself looking for his face in the crowd or flinching when I saw a dark blue pickup truck. He hadn't called or written since the day he'd given up the baby and me. I haven't tried to contact him either. Pride? Maybe. Or just the realization that some bridges were burned forever. My old home was on the other side of town, and I deliberately chose routes away from it. But the city isn't that big, and one day, standing in line at the supermarket, I saw a familiar figure, Merritt, picking out fruit at the counter. She didn't notice me, and I quickly changed the checkout, unprepared for the encounter. Are you afraid of her? Vern asked me that evening when I told her what had happened. I'm not afraid. I shook my head. I just don't want to. I'm not ready. I understand, she nodded. But you'll run into each other someday. Anchorage isn't that big. I know, I sighed. I just hope I won't care by then. Vern looked at me questioningly, but remained silent. We both knew that I wouldn't ever care. The wounds of betrayal are too deep. Meanwhile, things were taking an unexpected turn at my old home. One Saturday evening, when the Faulkner grocery store was already closed, Eunice returned to retrieve her forgotten purse. She rarely forgot things, much less often than I did, as she liked to remind me. But that evening, fatigue took its toll, and she left without it. The sky over Anchorage was still bright, as it is in May when the day seems endless. The streets were quiet, most of the stores closed. Eunice unlocked the back door with her key, trying not to make any noise. Harold hadn't slept well the last few weeks, not since. She didn't allow herself to finish that thought. Ever since they'd kicked their eldest daughter out of the house. Ever since their family split. Merritt stayed on the first floor, sorting through some papers. She spent more and more time in the store, delving into every detail, promising to turn the family business into something worthwhile. Eunice appreciated her zeal, but sometimes caught herself longing for the quieter days when the store was just a store, not an enterprise with potential. She was about to enter when she heard her daughter's voice, loud, animated, not at all like the quiet, subdued tone Merritt had been using in their presence for the past few weeks. Eunice froze, holding the door ajar. You don't know what a show it was! Merritt laughed into the receiver of the telephone. She stood there with that lost face of hers, and they believed me. Me, not her. Eunice froze. What is her daughter talking about? Seriously, Cassie, it was so easy. I just burst into tears and bam! Mommy took my side right away. And Dad? Well, you know him, he always agrees with Mommy. A chill ran down Eunice's spine. She knew what she was talking about, but part of her refused to believe it. No, she didn't steal, of course. Merritt continued with a slight chuckle. Tanith is too correct for that. But I needed something to get rid of her, you know. With her being pregnant and all. It would have ruined all my plans. Eunice felt her knees buckle. She leaned against the door jamb, trying to comprehend what she was hearing. Kicked her out literally in her slippers, can you believe it? In fucking house slippers. In a blizzard. Merritt laughed again, but there was a strange note in her laughter, something almost hysterical. I didn't think they'd go this far, honestly, but it's even better. I've got full control of the business now and… Eunice swung the door open so sharply that it hit the wall. Merritt jumped up, dropping the phone, which fell on the table with a thud. Mom! Her face changed instantly, frightened and guilty. I thought you'd gone home. I heard everything. Eunice's voice sounded strange even to her own ears, quiet, almost hissing. Everything, Merritt. Her daughter's face turned pale. Mom, you don't understand, I just… Shut up. Eunice raised her hand. I've heard enough. She looked at her youngest daughter as if she was seeing her for the first time. This beautiful, talented girl that she and Harold had always thought was special. Their pride, their hope. The girl who had just admitted to lying to her own sister, setting her up, ruining her life, and laughing about it. It wasn't like that. Merritt stood up, taking a step toward her mother. I was just exaggerated for Cassie. You know how it is. No, I don't. Eunice cut her off. I don't know how you can lie about your own sister. How you can accuse her of stealing something she didn't do. How you can make fun of a pregnant woman being kicked out of her house in a blizzard. She got pregnant by a man she barely knew. Merritt's voice had a familiar accusatory note in it. She would have ruined everything, our business, our plans. Ours? Eunice grinned bitterly. Or yours, Merritt? Merritt was silent, looking at her mother with wide-open eyes. You have always been special, Eunice continued, feeling each word hard to say. Talented, smart. We were so proud of you. Maybe we were too proud. Maybe we spoiled you. Don't say that. Merritt's voice trembled. I do everything for this family. For the business. Tanith never cared about that. She's your sister. Eunice was almost screaming now. She's your sister and she's carrying a child, my grandson or granddaughter, and we threw her out in a blizzard, in slippers. She almost whispered the last words, feeling nausea coming up her throat. What had they done? What had she done? Mom, listen. Merritt took another step forward, holding out her hand. I know it sounds awful, but I really thought it was best for everyone. Tanith can handle it. She always... Get out, Eunice said quietly. What? Get out of my house. Merritt looked at her as if she didn't understand the words. You can't. This is my house. Not anymore. Eunice straightened up, feeling the strange calm that came after the shock. You have an hour to pack your things, then I'll change the locks. You can't kick me out. Merritt was beginning to panic. Where would I go? Dad won't let you. Your father will agree with me when he finds out what you've done. Eunice cut her off. And don't worry, I won't kick you out in slippers. You can have any shoes you want. That last comment, spoken with bitter irony, made Merritt turn even paler. Mom, please. She tried to take Eunice's hand, but she pulled back. I know I was wrong, I admit it, but we can make it right. We'll find Tanith, we'll apologize. We? Eunice looked at her daughter with a new feeling, almost disgust. You think I don't realize what you're doing right now? You're manipulating again, lying again. We'll fix it. No, Merritt. You will fix what you've done, on your own. But how? I don't even know where she is. That's your problem. 1 hour, Merritt. Time's up. Eunice turned and walked out of the store, feeling her hands shaking. She climbed the stairs to the apartment where Harold was dozing in front of the television. What's wrong? He woke up when she came in. You look... Merritt lied, Eunice said simply, sinking into the chair opposite. Tanith didn't take anything. Merritt had set her up to get rid of her sister. Harold stared at her, blinking, as if not understanding the words. What are you... I heard her bragging to a friend on the phone, laughing about how easily she fooled us, how we kicked Tanith out in a blizzard, in slippers. She struggled to say the last words, tears welling up in her throat. Oh, God. Harold covered his face with his hands. I kicked her out of the house, Eunice continued without looking at her husband. I gave her an hour to pack. Merritt? You kicked Merritt out? Eunice nodded. What have we done, Harold? Her voice trembled. Our daughter, our grandson or granddaughter. We threw them out into the street. Harold was silent, and in his silence Eunice heard her own despair, her own realization. They had done the irreparable. There were sounds downstairs, Merritt gathering things, something falling, breaking. But Eunice did not move. She looked out the window at the May sky, still bright despite the late hour, and thought of Tanith. Where was she now? Was she alive? Is the baby healthy? Would she ever be able to forgive them? 45 minutes later, the front door slammed. Merritt left without saying goodbye. Eunice felt strangely relieved. She didn't know what she would say to her daughter now that the first anger had begun to give way to deep, overpowering guilt. We need to find Tanith. Harold finally broke the silence. Apologize. Bring her home. Do you think she'll come back? Eunice grinned bitterly. After what we've done. We have to try. He stood up, suddenly determined and collected as he hadn't been in years. Tomorrow I'll start looking. I'll call hospitals, shelters. She can't have traveled far. Eunice nodded, though her inner voice told her it wouldn't be that easy. They had betrayed Tanith in the most brutal way. They had chosen to believe the lie rather than her. They'd thrown her out in a blizzard without warm clothes, pregnant. Some betrayals cannot be undone with a simple "I'm sorry." Merritt, meanwhile, stood on the street in front of the house she had lived in all her life, with 2 suitcases and a bag. The warm May evening seemed cold to her, and she shivered as she looked at the familiar windows, behind which there was now no room for her. She pulled out her phone and tried to call Cassie, but she didn't answer. Then to David, a guy she dated from time to time. Voicemail. Then a few more friends. No one picked up the phone or could offer an overnight stay. Merritt slumped against her suitcase, feeling panic rise to her throat. Where should she go? What to do? Her plan wasn't supposed to turn out this way. She wanted control of the business, wanted to get rid of Tanith and her child who might get in the way. But she didn't think she'd end up on the streets herself one day. She looked down at her feet in her expensive leather boots, the same ones she'd bought with money taken from the cash register. The money she had accused her sister of stealing. At least I have shoes, she thought with bitter irony. At the same time, in a small house on the other side of town, I was getting ready for bed, unaware of the drama playing out in my former family. My thoughts were preoccupied with my courses, my future job, and the baby growing inside of me. Vern peeked into the room when I was already in bed. How are you feeling? Fine, I smiled. The nausea is almost gone. Good, she nodded. I'll make you an omelet for breakfast tomorrow. You need the protein. I nodded, touched by her concern. Vern never talked about feelings, but her actions spoke for themselves. Thank you, Vern, for everything. You're welcome, she waved her hand. Good night. She left, leaving me in a quiet room with a sense of security I hadn't felt since childhood. Across town, my former family was beginning to realize the consequences of their choices. Merritt stood on the street, unsure of where to go. My parents sat in silence, crushed by guilt. And I, unaware of all this, slept the peaceful sleep of a woman who had started a new life, a difficult one, but her own. In the morning, Eunice called the first hospital on the list. They told her that no Tanith Faulkner had been admitted. Other hospitals and shelters said the same. Harold tried to find Quentin Hedges' address, but no luck. They only knew his name and place of employment. Maybe she'd left town? Harold suggested after a day of unsuccessful searching. With what money? Eunice asked bitterly. We threw her out empty-handed. The guilt was eating them from the inside out, robbing them of sleep and appetite. Every ring of the doorbell made them flinch. Was it Tanith back? But it was never her. Merritt spent the night in a cheap motel, paying for it with a credit card that was almost maxed out. In the morning, she called everyone she knew, but no one offered her permanent housing. She wasn't used to rejection. All her life, everything had come easy to her. Now reality was bearing down on her with all its cruelty. At noon, she plucked up the courage to call her mother. I apologized, she lied. Found Tanith and apologized. Can I go back now? Don't lie to me again. Eunice's voice was tired. We didn't find Tanith, and I don't think you did. But Mom, no, Merritt. You made a choice. Now live with the consequences. For the first time in her life, Merritt faced a hardness she couldn't overcome with tears or manipulation. She sank down on the motel bed, staring at the flickering TV screen, and for the first time really thought about what she had done. She'd kicked her pregnant sister out of the house. For what? For control of a small grocery store? Out of jealousy? Out of spite? Merritt had never been prone to introspection, always finding excuses for her actions. But now, sitting alone in a cheap room, without the support and protection her family had always provided, she began to realize the magnitude of her act. Meanwhile, I was driving the school bus, taking the kids home after school. My life went on, no matter what. Though the wound of betrayal still hurt, I was beginning to look forward instead of backward. I didn't know that at this very minute my family was falling apart, that the truth was coming out, that Merritt was getting what she deserved. But even if I had known, I'm not sure it would have brought me satisfaction. After all, it wouldn't bring back those weeks of terror and uncertainty, wouldn't erase the memory of the cold of that April night when I walked the streets of Anchorage barefoot, pregnant and rejected. Some things can't be undone, even if the truth is revealed. Some wounds don't heal completely, and some roads once parted never come together again. Summertime Anchorage was bathed in sunlight. After a long winter and a capricious spring, the city seemed alive with color and scent, and the endless summer days seemed like a generous gift from nature. My belly was already clearly rounded. At 16 weeks, it was impossible to hide the pregnancy, and I didn't want to. My coworkers congratulated me, some with embarrassment, others with genuine joy. Ray brought me a box of gingerbread, which he said had helped his wife's nausea during all three pregnancies. The dispatcher's course was coming to an end, and I was studying for the exam with an enthusiasm I hadn't felt in a long time. Vern helped me prepare in the evenings, asking me textbook questions while we ate dinner. "What's the procedure in an emergency involving a school bus?" she asked, reading out the question. "Keep the children safe, call emergency services, inform the school and parents, and fill out an incident report," I answered while chopping a salad. Vern and I had developed our own little routine for our life together. She'd get up early and make breakfast. I'd handle dinner and do the dishes. We split the bills in half, though I knew she was discreetly taking on more expenses, especially lately when I started buying things for the baby. I set up a baby corner in my room, small but cozy. The crib my neighbor Vern had given me stood by the window. I painted it a soft yellow color, not yet knowing if it was a boy or a girl. "Don't you want to know the sex of the baby?" Vern asked me when I got back from my regular checkup. "I want it to be a surprise," I replied, though the truth was more complicated. Part of me was afraid to get too attached, to plan too detailed, as if learning more about the baby would make losing him even scarier. One hot July day, coming home from work, I found an envelope in my mailbox with no return address. Inside was a short note and $500 in cash. "Tanith, I hope you are doing well. Here's some money for the baby. G." G is Harold, my father. I stared at his uneven handwriting, feeling a storm of emotions rising inside: anger, relief, bitterness, longing. Vern found me on the porch, still holding the envelope in my hands. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting down beside me. "A letter from my father." I handed her the envelope. "And the money." She read the short note and hummed. Not a word of apology. "No." "What are you going to do?" I wondered. The money would come in handy. The baby stuff was expensive, and my income would be temporarily reduced when I started working as a dispatcher. But accepting it would mean opening the door to the past I'd tried to leave behind. "I don't know," I answered honestly. "It's up to you." Vern handed the envelope back to me. "But remember, money is just paper. It doesn't commit you to anything." That night I couldn't sleep for a long time, thinking about the letter. Why had my father written now? Had he found out the truth about Merritt's manipulations? Had he been looking for me all this time? And most importantly, did it matter? My life had changed. I've changed. The defenseless, insecure Tanit who let her family decide for her was a thing of the past. I was now responsible not only for myself, but for the little life inside me. In the morning, I made a decision. I put the money in the account I'd set up specifically for the baby, but I didn't answer the letter. If my father really wanted to be a part of my life, he would have to do more than send an anonymous envelope of money. July turned to August. I graduated with honors in dispatcher training and was preparing to move on to a new position in September. Vern threw a small party to celebrate my success. She baked a cake and invited a few colleagues. "To Tanith Faulkner, the best dispatcher in Anchorage," she proclaimed, raising a glass of non-alcoholic cider. I smiled as I looked at these people: Vern, Ray, a few of the drivers we'd worked side by side with over the years. They weren't perfect. They had their quirks, their problems, but they accepted me, supported me through a difficult time, and now they're enjoying my success as if it were their own. "I thought about your proposal," I said to Vern later, when the guests had dispersed. "About staying here for good." She looked up from the dishes she was washing. I'd like to take it, if it still stands." "Of course," she nodded, as if it were the most natural solution. Your room didn't look like a guest room anymore anyway. It was true. Over the months, I'd slowly settled into the space, hung a few pictures, arranged my books, set up the crib. It was already my home, my sanctuary. "Thank you." I walked over to her and hugged her awkwardly by the shoulders. Vern tensed for a moment. She wasn't used to displays of affection, but then relaxed and patted my arm. "It's okay, girl. It's okay." In early September, with my belly already noticeably rounded and my back starting to ache from the extra weight, I made my weekly trip to the supermarket. Vern usually went with me, but this time she had a special trip. She was taking the kids to the museum downtown. I was walking slowly between the rows, picking out groceries and checking the list, when I felt eyes on me. When I looked up, I saw her, my mother, standing a few feet away from me, basket in hand and a shocked expression on her face. Eunice Faulkner looked aged. Her hair, always perfectly colored, now showed gray at the roots. Her eyes seemed tired, and new wrinkles lingered at the corners of her mouth. We stared at each other across the canned goods aisle, and time seemed to stand still. What did I feel? Anger? Sure. Pain? No doubt. But also a strange calm, almost detached, as if I were looking at a stranger. Tanith, she finally broke the silence, stepping forward. You, you look good. I involuntarily put my hand on my stomach, a protective gesture that had become habitual over the past few months. Thank you, I replied neutrally. We, we've been looking for you. She took another step and I instinctively backed away. After we learned the truth. The truth? My heart skipped a beat. That Merritt lied. That you didn't take the money. So they found out. That explained the letter from my dad. His attempt to, what, apologize? To make amends? Or just to assuage his own conscience? I heard her bragging on the phone, Mom continued when I was silent, about how easily she fooled us. How we, her voice trembled, how we threw you out in a blizzard, in slippers. The memory of that night flared up with renewed intensity. The cold, the bone-chilling cold, the fear, the despair. I shook my head, pushing those images away. It's in the past, I said, surprised at the calmness in my voice. Tanith, we made a terrible mistake. Mom took another step and I saw tears in her eyes. We should have trusted you. We should have protected you, especially in your situation. Instead, we chose Merritt. As always, I finished for her. She flinched as if slapped. We kicked her out when we found out the truth, she said quietly. She doesn't live with us anymore. So what? Now I have to go back? Is it going to be like it was before? Mom looked at me with a hopefulness that broke my heart with its naivety. We could start over. Your room is waiting for you. We'll help with the baby. You don't have to go through this alone. I'm not alone, I said firmly. I have a home, a job, people who care about me not because they have to, but because they want to. Her face contorted in pain. We're your family, Tanith. Blood is not water. Family doesn't kick a pregnant woman out into the street in a blizzard, I replied, feeling the anger rising inside. Family doesn't take away your shoes when you ask for help. The family believes you, not pretty lies. Shoppers began to pay attention to us. A young woman with a shopping cart slowed down, looking at us curiously. Let's talk somewhere else, Mom lowered her voice. Why don't we have coffee, or come home? Your father will be so happy to see you. He's been sending you. I got his letter. And the money. He didn't know what else to do. She looked almost pleading. We didn't know where you were, how you were, if you were even alive. Something in her last words tugged at me. They really didn't know if I was alive. For them, I could have frozen that night, or been hit by a car, or just disappeared. And they lived with that fear the whole time. Part of me wanted revenge, to make them suffer longer. But the other part, the new, wiser Tanith, knew that revenge wouldn't bring me peace. I'm fine, I said more gently. As you can see, alive and well. So is the baby. Is it, a boy or a girl? I don't know. I want it to be a surprise. She nodded, and for a moment there was a semblance of normal conversation between us, just mother and daughter talking about the baby-to-be. Tanith, please, she stepped toward me again. Give us a chance. We made a terrible mistake, but we love you. We want to be a part of your life and the baby's life. I looked at her, the woman who raised me, who taught me to read and tie my shoelaces, who baked my favorite cookies at Christmas, the woman who always favored Merritt, who closed the door in my face at the worst moment of my life. I can't, I said quietly. Not now, maybe not ever. Her face drained, but she nodded. I understand. But if you change your mind, Our door is always open. The bitter irony of those words didn't escape me. Their door wasn't open when I needed it most. Goodbye, Mom. I turned around, leaving the grocery cart behind, and headed for the exit. Tanith! She called out to me and I stopped but didn't turn around. We love you, no matter what. I didn't answer. What could I say? That I loved them too? That would be a lie, at least now when the wounds were still fresh. That I hated them? That wasn't true either. The truth was more complicated, more tangled, a tangle of love, pain, anger, and longing that I wasn't ready to unravel yet. I walked out of the store into the bright September sun, feeling strangely relieved. I had come face to face with the past and hadn't broken. I hadn't thrown myself into a motherly embrace or forgiven everything at the snap of my fingers. I made my choice, a hard one, but my own. When I got home, I found Vern in the backyard. She was planting some bulbs, getting ready for next spring. You're early, she remarked, getting up and shaking off her knees. And no groceries? I met my mom at the store, I replied, sinking down onto the garden bench. Couldn't stay. Oh, she sat down next to me. And how did it go? I told her about the conversation, about how they found out the truth, about Merritt not living with them anymore, about their wish for me to come back. Do you want to go back? Vern asked when I was done. I shook my head. No, but part of me feels, I don't know, guilt for not forgiving them. Vern was silent for a long time, staring at her little garden, the neat vegetable beds, the flowers around the perimeter, the apple tree in the corner, already starting to lose its leaves. You know, she finally said, forgiveness is not an event, it's a process. Sometimes long, sometimes painful, and you don't have to rush it. I nodded, feeling her words resonate with me. And also, she added, rising, forgiveness doesn't mean going back. You can forgive them when you're ready and still live your life. Here. With us. With us. Those two words sounded like a promise, like reassurance that I was no longer alone. Thank you. I got up too. I'll go make dinner. And I'll finish the bulbs. She nodded. I want tulips here in the spring, red and yellow. I smiled, imagining how my baby, who would be a few months old then, would look at those brightly colored flowers with his new eyes. He'll love it, I said, stroking my belly. Or her, Vern winked at me. Either way, it would be his or her first spring. We should make it special. That evening, lying in bed, I thought about our meeting with Mom, about Vern's words, about the future that awaited me and my baby. I didn't know if I could ever truly forgive my parents. I didn't know if they would ever be a part of my child's life. These were questions I didn't have answers to yet. But I did know one thing. My real family was here in this house. Not perfect, not what I had envisioned in my dreams, but real. Vern and her gruff caring, co-workers who had become friends, the future tulips in the yard, and of course, my soon-to-be-born baby. I closed my eyes, placing my hand on my stomach where a new person was quietly growing, a person who would never know the pain of rejection that I had experienced, a person who would grow up in an atmosphere of acceptance and unconditional love. Good night, baby, I whispered. Your mommy loves you, always and no matter what. And in that moment, in the quiet room of the house that had become my sanctuary, I felt like I was really starting a new life. A life in which I am not a victim of circumstance, but a strong woman capable of creating my own destiny. A life where the past remains the past and the future is full of possibilities. And for the first time in a long time, I truly believed that everything would be okay.